This is the show dedicated to raising up the next generation of men of faith and character. My name is Mark Stanifer. Welcome to the Next Man Up. Hey guys, welcome back once again. My name is Mark Stanifer. So good to have you with us. Today we're going to pick up right where we left off with last episode, talking with Darren Lewis, a father of 4 boys, a husband, director of Fathering Adventures, an organization he's been running for the last 12 years. And in this episode, we're going to get deeper into the work that he's doing, the experience, what those adventures are like, and why they're structured the way they are to speak to both mind and heart. We're also going to talk about how foundational the relationship is between father and child, whether that's a boy or a girl, and the challenge men face in our desire to fix things, missing the importance of building that relationship. And finally, we'll end talking about legacy and developing a legacy of no regrets. So that's what's in store for you today in the second half of this incredible chat that I had with Darren. Excited to bring this conclusion to you today. And before we get into this, I'll just remind you, if you want to get a hold of us, get in touch with us, give us feedback, whatever. On Facebook, we live at TNMU Journey, and you can also email us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. All right, let's get to the second half of this conversation with Darren Lewis. Here we go. So you and I could geek out on that topic for a long time, but I want to shift to the work that you're doing today, because there's some good stuff there that I want you to share with our listeners. So you started, maybe 9 years ago, 8-9 years ago now, 10 years ago or so, started an organization.
12 years, yeah.
12 years.
So about 12 and a half years ago, officially started. We're sort of doing some things before that, but 12 and a half years now of,
so
facilitating these father-son and father-daughter adventure experiences for the general public, yeah.
So it's called Fathering Adventures. And, so we've kind of traced some of your story, but what was it that really prompted you to go in that direction and launch Fathering Adventures?
Yeah, so perhaps it's a multifaceted answer, and so I'm not going to answer it with all of those multifacets. I'm gonna focus on the one thing that really was motivated me more greatly than the others. And that was the fact that God had led my wife and I to be counselors for men and women and couples and marriages, families. And we became this was something we were doing in the evening, just in our living rooms. And it was a big part of that was actually listening to their story, devoting a whole night. For some people who had really quite intricate stories, it would be 2 nights of just listening to their story, hours and hours and hours. And it was such a privilege to sit in on that. Now we saw God show up and bring beautiful healing of hearts and lives and relationships, to these people. And then they would go back. And they would tell others, right? They'd tell their friends who were going through something similar, whether it be personal issues or relational issues. And then those people would phone me up, and we would then begin walking with them, and it just kept growing and growing and growing to the point where quite literally we had 6 nights of the week were devoted to that, and that was not good for us to be so. Giving out to so many and actually it was just not, the balance wasn't there. Right. So, right. It took me a while, but thankfully I asked the question, Father, what do you have to teach me in this? Like, what, I can't just say no to these people, but what have I learnt over the last, 7 years or so that we've been counseling people? What have I learnt to be able to do this more effectively? And it was only then that God actually said, we'll just have a look at the people that you've ministered to, right? And I would have said at the time, maybe 99% of those men and women who came were had a father wound, and I wasn't looking at that, right? I was more focused on, Jesus, what do you have for this person? What went wrong in their story? How should I play my part in their healing? And so that was my approach. But now all of a sudden Jesus is sort of saying, hey, listen, they've got a father wound.
Yep.
And knowing prevention is better than cure, I began to set out, well, who's actively doing stuff preventing the father wound? So we've mentioned John Eldridge, we've mentioned Robert Lewis, there's Gordon Dolby, there's a lot of good men, a lot of good authors, a lot of good ministries, a lot of good churches out there who are aware of the father wound, but there's very little actually in place preventing the father wound. And so really that became my quest, was what is the best way to prevent father wounding? And that's how Fathering Adventures came to exist.
So talk a little bit about what you do in this work, and like what your adventures are, and how it all comes together.
Yeah, so the adventures are really I want to say, first of all, that word adventure, people go adventures and so, okay, there's going to be outdoor adventures. And yes, there are. That's absolutely a big part of what we do. But there's the real adventure is actually, the more important adventure is actually a father's heart turning back to his son or turning back to his daughter and actually, giving them what they need from him. And so, when a father begins to turn his heart back to his kids and begins to really pursue them and take an active role in their lives, that's the adventure, and that's what excites me most. But so yes, look, we first of all, it has to be fun. So it's experiential. So when I first started out, I was like, okay, so should I write a book? Should I, no, there's plenty of good books. Should I run workshops and seminars and conferences and things? Well, yes, but that's not it. There's that African proverb that says, I hear, I forget, I see, I remember, I do, I understand. So I want it to be experiential. And so each adventure experiences always has a combination of, yes, some outdoor adventure, and ultimately there's one element of that is the fact that it's a challenge. Often brings a challenge. It's usually something that people don't do in there every day. It's always one-on-one. We do make exemptions for twins and so on, but even then we kind of say if you can bring them separately, if that would be better for them, you just need to be wise with that. But if it's better for them to come individually, it is better. One-on-one.
Father-child one-on-one. That's what you mean, right?
Father-son or a father-daughter,
right, yeah.
One-on-one.
Yep,
yeah, exactly. Yep. So we'll have, we might have anywhere from 10 father-son or father-daughter pairs up to, 18 father-son or father-daughter pairs. But yes, the each residential unit is with one-on-one. And that's really important because that's how they learn. So really it's twofold reasons behind this. First of all, it's all about relationship. Relationship is foundational to everything else. So we love talking about rites of passage, initiating our sons and daughters and so forth, and our role in that. The reality is if we don't have a relationship with them, or that relationship is cracks in it, you try and build anything else on that, you try and impart anything, and it's just going to crumble. It's not going to be so. We're very relational in our approach. We make fun a priority. We want, part of what we want to hear from people is that I didn't realize, and we hear it all the time, I didn't realize how much fun I could have with my son or my daughter, or I didn't realize how much fun I could have with my dad, and so I love that because, as much as important as it is to be serious, it's also really important to be able to have fun, let our hair down. And so there's the one-on-one, there's some outdoor adventure component, there's some teaching, again, that training and instruction, that coaching. There's that I bring with film clips and things, and what we do is we very, again, intentionally interweave these other experiences into the adventures. So at every adventure there's always an opportunity. Again, we provide the coaching for it before the opportunity, but the opportunity for a father to publicly affirm his son or his daughter in the ways that I'd kind of shown him to do that. And they're always very beautiful. There's times where we'll have, the father and son or father and daughter will have their time alone, and there'll be conversations that are sparked. Like we will kind of prepare the son and prepare the daughter for conversation that they're going to have. And usually we get the son or daughter to even initiate that conversation by asking a question. And of course, what dad doesn't want his son or daughter to ask questions, right, and actually have a real, conversation with them, rather than just the grunts that you might get from typically a teenager. And then of course, for that older age group, prepared for manhood and prepared for womanhood adventures, there's actually a ceremony whereby they cross that threshold, and there's a celebration. And so it's just a combination, and I think it's really important to find the balance, and I feel as though we've got that balance now. Lots of fun, lots of adventure, challenge. There's dads that are present. There's other fathers, other sons, other daughters that are present. There's the training and instruction. There's these experiential, opportunities to be blessed by dads, and even have other fathers kind of speaking into, their child's lives. So it's very precious, very powerful.
Yeah, it sounds like it, because what I'm hearing you say is you've taken the teaching content and sort of the intellectual or the head content, the mind, developing the mind, yes, and put it also in the context of an experience, particularly a one-on-one father-son, father-daughter experience. That also includes the adventure, right? Doing something different, maybe getting out of your comfort zone, facing a fear or facing a challenge. It's like you've been able to integrate the two of them and take the best of both and put it together.
Yeah, I think that fathers, the reality is you probably wouldn't get too many fathers and their teenagers say, yes, I'll come, to just sit in front of somebody that's talking, even if they are going to use film clips. So you do, for us, the outdoor adventure is like the lure, it's the bait, it's kind of like, hooking, especially the children in, and it's a great opportunity for the father to extend that invitation to their son or daughter. It's just glorious. I mean, the thing is what we provide is the environment, and then God shows up and does the rest. But what I love is the fact that by offering what we offer, the father and son can come and take part. They're active participants, and then I'm confident, and they are confident that beyond the experience, it's going to continue, because that's really important. As wonderful as the experience is, if it's just the experience on its own and then everything goes back to the way that it was, well, how worth it was it? Yeah. But the fact that we actually get the dads and their kids we kind of stretch them, and we stretch them relationally. We pursue those relational adventure components. We have a great confidence that, and I received a phone call just the other day, of just, a dad whose son's well and truly grown up, and he's in his 20s now, and he just wanted to tell me a story about how his son is lives in a different city, and his son phoned up and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm coming back, and I'd like to take you out for dinner," and he's just like, "How good's that, Darren?" It's just there's just this knowing, and this having the experience, it provides that knowing, and it's like, we want this beyond this adventure, and we get them thinking about that too. So what are you gonna, when we go on our hike, what are you going to leave behind here, and what are you going to take with you? Yeah. And so it really helps them to even have a vision that they come up with together, they envision together, of what the future might look like for them as father and son, or father and daughter, as men, or as a daughter becoming a woman, and so forth. So, great opportunities for all of these things. So it's a practical application of like you say, the theory, and that's essential for men. Men need to be able to apply. It's the way we learn best. To be able to, not just hear it, but actually have an experience where we can apply what we've learnt, and that's actually a common some common feedback we get too from dads is, I feel as though I've been initiated through this. I came to initiate my son, but I've been initiated in this process. And I love that, because we don't market that, but that's definitely
it's
part
happening.
of the process.
Yeah. So I know you get feedback on a regular basis. You've referenced some of that just now. What's one of the coolest stories that you've experienced or heard coming out of one of your adventures?
I think it's really hard. Geez, it's so hard because they're all so cool. I mean, we've had. I remember a mum phoning me up saying, "Darren, my son's in a mental institution, an adult hospital, because he's failed a second suicide attempt, and he's opened up to me, and he said, I really, despite the fact that Dad is here, I don't feel that I know him." And so, she immediately registers him for an adventure, and we actually were full at the time, but we just moved heaven and earth, because I didn't want some young man sort of taking his own life when we might have been able to do something about that. And so they came along and became really rich together. And I mean, that mum for years later would send me Christmas cards, and just give me updates, say, here's what Jack's doing now. And it just brought great joy to them. So there's quite literally lives saved.
Yep.
Other families, there's things like, there's a mum who wrote an email and sort of said, I don't know what you did, but before the adventure, there was warring that was taking place in our home. Our son, and it was being very disrespectful, and my husband wasn't handling that well, and now they've come back with a really rich relationship, and that's continued, and it's just so I love every bit of feedback that we hear. It's just I've not received probably the worst feedback we've ever received would be from some religious person who might have said, there should have been more scripture, involved. And we bring our fair share of scripture.
Yeah.
But the reality is that he, again, he was operating out of his head, right? And not actually, engaging his heart in this transaction with his child. And so there's not a lot we can do about that. Where it is a balance. It is a fine balance, and we feel as though we've got that balance right. So we accept, that when we heard that bit of feedback, but we also, chose to reject sort of changing things based on that feedback. But yeah, the feedback is always excellent. I mean, you can go to Google reviews and actually read, a whole bunch of dads, mums, kids, who've written reviews there, and it's beautiful.
It's interesting. The two stories that came to mind both started with "Mom called me" or "Mom wrote me." I wonder if you have found this to be true, that sometimes the mom intuitively gets that there's a relational issue. There's a relationship that's broken at home between dad and kids. And it's like, they're so, generally speaking, they're so relationally intuitive that they just know something is wrong, and they become the encourager to dad to go do something like this. And you're shaking your head like you know this to be. I think that is happening. What do you think? What has your experience been like?
It's absolutely happening. Probably the only thing that is, I love your words are very beautiful. You said encouraging. My encouragement to mums, my counsel to mums is encourage, don't nag. There's a real, sometimes mums, I think, because men and women are different. So sometimes a mum will look at a situation and see it very clearly and not understand why her husband can't.
Yep.
And so she can get frustrated with that. She can make suggestions and he's not picking up what she's laying down. And so, look, we need to be able to listen to our wives and not get defensive about it, but actually understand that we're different, that they see things that we don't always see. I mean, I'm so grateful that my wife, I mean, I feel as though I've been a good dad, to my kids. And there's been times where my wife has said, hey, honey, I think, and it wasn't criticism, it was just like, hey, honey, I think that this son actually needs you to give a little bit more time to them.
Yep.
Or especially going through what they're going through right now or whatever. And I've just been wise enough to say, okay, honey, and then just go and do it. And sure enough, it all changes. I mean, I have dads phone me and just say, listen, I'm having some real issues with my kids, with my son or whatever. And I just very gently say, can I ask how much time are you spending with him, just him or her? And well, I don't spend time with him. And I'm like, okay, go and give that a shot, right?
Yeah.
So I think for us men, we like we're action people, right? We're kind of like we just want to solve the problem.
That's right.
And so we see a behavioral issue, and we're just like, okay, we need to fix this behavior. But what it actually requires is a relational response, is a relational investment. And so to actually go, oh, I see this symptom being behavior. I need to take my son out or my daughter out. I need to check in with them. How are they doing? Like what more could I be doing, for them? What do they need from me, at this time? And just, hey, let's just go and even do something fun together and not say a word, right? You need to kind of be very careful with your approach, especially as they get older, but it's really important that we stay active, that we're involved and that's essential.
Yeah. No, well said. So I want to ask you this question. As you get to the end of your time, and not implying at all that it's in the near future, but we all know it's coming, right?
It's coming. That's right. Yeah.
You get, and you're living in such a way that you're making it happen now, right? Like trying to live in such a way that you don't have regrets. But when you get to the end and you look back on the legacy or the wake that you have left behind, both for you personally and for Fathering Adventures, what do you want that to be? Two questions there, like one for me personally, one for Fathering Adventures. I think for Fathering Adventures, I think I would love to know that could continue beyond my lifetime, and I'm doing my very best to raise up others. It's really hard because a lot of men have so many doubts about whether or not they could do what I do. There's just this lack of belief, again, as uninitiated men. So really I want to be journeying closely with men over the next few years to be able to help them to believe that they have what it takes to be able to continue this work beyond my lifetime. I hope it continues. I can't guarantee that. I've been allotted, or there's been a period of time that's been ordained for me, and I'm responsible for using that time as best as I can. So I'll continue to do that. Personally, it's funny that you sort of said no regrets, because we actually had over my second son and his girlfriend last night, and his girlfriend is really she's got father issues, and I just kind of brought a loving challenge to her last night, because it was her birthday last week, and her father had phoned. Now he was a violent man, and she left very early on. She was only 17 and a half when she left home, and she really struggles with him. And so he phoned her for the birthday, and she ignored it, and she hasn't phoned him back. And she was kind of just throwing that out there. And I challenged her on it. I just said, listen, here's the thing, is I said, at the end of your life, which is, as you said, is going to come for each of us, you don't want to have regrets. And I shared a little bit about my story, with her with regards to my dad and what I did. And you could just see that it really impacted her, and she's going to phone him and begin. We're kind of gently, it's relatively newish relationship. So we're kind of gently, leading her towards,
forgiving and loving her father again, despite what he's done. So we do need to be gentle with that, and she just loves it. So I guess I want to be known as having no regrets. I want to be known as somebody who lived life to the full, who took risks, who just didn't settle for less. It's probably, and really, who's going to know that? It's our wives and our children. And so for me, that is our legacy, our families, our wives, our children, our in-laws, our grandchildren. I mean, we actually had a conversation where my eldest son phoned up and said, "Mum, when Dad dies, you want to bring, why don't you come? We can build in downstairs. You can come and live with us." And unbeknownst to me, she said, "Actually, my sister has invited me to go and live there." I'm thinking, does somebody know something that I don't? But we kind of laughed about it because they've made plans,
right?
And my daughter-in-law said, "Oh, I don't think I could stop crying." Like and again, my eldest son, his wife didn't have a good relationship with her dad, and I think I've really helped to father her, and so our children, their wives, their spouses, their husbands, and their grandchildren, they are what's most important. So what I want to be remembered as by them is that Dad was there. Like Dad was always there, and ultimately, Dad introduced me to my Heavenly Father. He represented our Heavenly Father well. If I can somehow, and I like to say that I'm on the right track in being able to see that desire become a reality. And I think I'm probably already there. If God was to take me tonight, then I think that I would already leave that with them. But that's what I want to continue focusing on, is for them to have a really rich, talk about thriving relationships, between fathers and children, to actually for our children as adults to be having thriving relationships with their Heavenly Father, to know that He's always there, that wherever they are, wherever they go, He'll never leave them nor forsake them. So, and if by the way that I've been able to live my life and interact with them has helped to give them direction to be able to live that way, then I would die a very happy, satisfied man.
Yeah, so good, man, so good. Well, I imagine there's some listeners out there that might be curious about how to get more into Darren's space, and so your website, probably the best way to direct people. Your website is fatheringadventures.com.au. And then they can, and then they can find
Australia.
That's right. And then they can find you on website at Fathering Adventures, right? And
on Facebook,
yeah. Did I say website?
I think so.
Facebook.
I think so,
yeah. Yes. Let's be clear, on Facebook at Fathering Adventures. And look, what you see or what you hear is what you get with Darren, guys. He's a quality guy. And if Queensland ever opens up to host events again, it's worth making the trip. I know you've had dads and kids from the States. You've referred to some of those already, but it's worth making the trip. This is a quality guy and quality and important work that he's doing. So Darren, thank you for being on the show today, for bringing it, for sharing your story, and for impacting those listeners whose story is like yours, or who needed to hear from you in your language and through your experiences, just the way you did. So thank you.
You are very gracious and very generous in your words, in your compliments, and I receive them, and I thank you for that. And it's been my absolute pleasure to be able to be another voice in the lives of your listeners. So, I hope that it was worthwhile for them, because that's why you and I do what we do.
That's right. So listeners, this, we get to the end of these conversations, and There is this moment of, okay, so what? You just heard Darren's story. You heard the work that he's doing. You know your own story and the different things that you are working through, how you are being initiated. What was it in Darren's message and his story and the work that he's doing, or even some other idea that was prompted in your head? What was it that you can take action on, that you can follow up on, even if it's just something small? The whole point here boils down to that heart connection with God the Father and with your children, if you have children, maybe with your father. Maybe you've got this father wound that you need to work through. Whatever it is, I don't know, but let me encourage you to take one small step and grow in that direction, whatever that is for you. That's the challenge. And I encourage you as strongly as I can. I encourage you to just move in that direction. Don't let this just be a good story and good content with no action that you put behind it. Well, Darren, once again, thank you for being here. Listeners, thank you for giving us your time. You could be anywhere, and you've chosen to spend the last 60 minutes or so listening in on this conversation, and we don't take that for granted. And if you have any feedback, I'll just remind you, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your questions. If you want to reach out to Darren, get him on Facebook at Fathering Adventures. And we look forward to having you back again next week with another episode. So listeners, until then, adios. Hey listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. You know, we would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.